Chapter 1. The Howl. The groom smelled like cedar soap and good intentions, and Celine Beckett was going to marry him in 11 minutes. She stood at the back of the stone hall in a dress she didn't hate, holding a bouquet of mountain laurel she'd picked herself because the florist had gotten the order wrong and she'd fixed it at dawn rather than complain about it. That was the kind of person Celine was. Things broke. She fixed them. The fixing was the point. Perry Hale stood at the altar, looking exactly the way a groom should look, clean, nervous, slightly damp at the temples. He was a good man, a steady man, the kind of man who brought firewood without being asked and remembered which knee was the bad one. He would make a reliable mate and a decent father, and she would never once wonder what he was thinking because he would simply tell her, plainly, without fuss. Their match was political. The Cairn Pack and the Blackwood Pack had shared a disputed border for 3 generations, and a mating between the Alpha's daughter and the Blackwood Beta's eldest son was the kind of clean solution that made cartographers happy. Celine had agreed because it made sense. Perry had agreed because he liked her. Neither of them had pretended it was more than it was. Adequate, Diana observed. Celine ignored her wolf. Diana had opinions about everything and enthusiasm about nothing. The hall was packed. 200 wolves from both packs, dressed in their best, sitting on stone benches worn smooth by a century of ceremonies. Her father, Hugh Beckett, Alpha of the Cairn, stood at the front with the ceremonial cord in his hands. His expression said, "I am proud of my daughter, and also, if this goes past 45 minutes, I am going to start making faces." In the second-to-last row, King Caspian Greymane of the Greymane territory sat with his sister Alice, attending as a diplomatic courtesy. His presence said, "I see this alliance. I respect it. I will not take advantage of the redrawn border." He'd brought his second-best jacket because the best one would have been trying too hard. The music started. Celine began to walk. She was halfway down the aisle, 14 steps from the altar she'd counted during rehearsal because she counted everything, when she felt it. Not the music, not the crowd, not the ceremonial weight of what she was about to do. Something else. Something underneath all of that, like a bass note that hadn't been there before, resonating in a part of her chest she'd never used. "Oh," Diana said. The word was different from anything Diana had ever said. Not sardonic, not flat. Awake. Like a tuning fork finding its frequency for the first time. Celine kept walking. Step 15. Step 16. Don't look back. Whatever that was, it doesn't matter. Perry is at the altar. The dress doesn't wrinkle if she keeps her shoulders square. The bouquet stems are uneven, and she doesn't care. "Celine," Diana said, "stop walking." She didn't stop. Caspian was sitting in the second-to-last row counting the minutes until he could politely leave when every cell in his body caught fire. It didn't arrive gradually. It arrived the way a wall arrives when you walk into it. One moment, he was watching the bride begin her procession with the detached courtesy of a visiting sovereign, and the next moment, the air in the room reorganized itself entirely around a single scent. Cold river water, rosemary. The specific mineral smell of stone after rain. His hands locked on the bench. "Oh," said Craig. Caspian's vision tunneled. His heartbeat was doing something it had never done before. Not faster exactly, but heavier, as though each beat was being individually supervised by something much older than his brain. Much older than him. Old as moonlight. Old as the first wolf who ever looked at another wolf across a clearing and understood what the rest of its life was for. A moon goddess bond, the rarest of the rare, the kind the elders told stories about and nobody alive had ever actually seen. "She's ours," Craig said, and the word carried the weight of absolute, unshakable, cosmically certain conviction. "That's our mate. She's walking toward the wrong wolf." No, Caspian thought. Not here. Not now. She's at the altar. Why is she at the altar? She should be here, with us. I don't understand what's happening. She's marrying someone, Craig. That's incorrect. That's factually, spiritually, and in every other way incorrect. Someone should tell her. Nobody is telling her anything. I'll tell her. Craig, do not. The howl that came out of King Caspian Greymane's chest was not a sound he chose to make. It was a sound that had been waiting since before he was born. The moon goddess's signature written in one long, devastating note that every wolf in the hall recognized instantly for what it was. The hall erupted. Perry Hale turned toward the back of the room. Hugh Beckett dropped the ceremonial cord. Alice Greymane, sitting next to her brother, closed her eyes and said, very quietly, "Oh, Caspian, not now." Margot, Celine's maid of honor, said, "What the actual," and didn't finish. And Celine Beckett stood 3 steps from the altar, bouquet in a death grip, and felt the bond complete itself like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known she had. "There you are," Diana said quietly. "I wondered when you'd arrive." "No," Celine said aloud. The hall was staring at the back row where a king was on his feet, white-faced, jaw set, looking like a man who had just been betrayed by his own skeleton. Every wolf in the room could feel it. The bond was radiating off both of them like heat from a forge, visible, unmistakable, the kind of thing that happened once in a generation and was already being memorized by 200 witnesses who would tell this story for the rest of their lives. Celine turned around. Their eyes met across 60 feet of stone hall. The world narrowed to a point. "Mate," Craig said. "Mate," Diana said. And then Perry Hale did the most decent thing anyone in the hall had ever seen. He stepped down from the altar. He walked to Celine. He put his hand on her arm, gently, the way you'd touch someone who'd just been struck by lightning, and said, loud enough for the front rows to hear, "I think we should stop." Celine looked at him. Her eyes were huge. "The bonding ceremony is suspended," Perry said, and his voice was steady and kind and not angry at all. "Until we figure out what this is." He looked at Caspian across the hall. Caspian looked at him. 2 men, one standing next to the woman the moon goddess had just claimed for the other. Perry nodded once. Not surrender, acknowledgement. And the hall dissolved into chaos. Chapter 2. The Restraint. There were rules about moon goddess bonds. Celine knew them the way she knew everything, thoroughly, practically, with the full awareness that knowing the rules didn't make them easier to follow. A moon goddess bond was the rarest gift the goddess could bestow. Both wolves recognized simultaneously. Both felt it. Both knew. It was mutual, instant, and undeniable, and the last confirmed one had occurred 87 years ago in the Northern Territories. The elders spoke of it with reverence. The romantic ballads made it sound like the answer to everything. The ballads didn't mention the part where the bond landed on a woman who was 3 steps from marrying someone else. The first rule: the bond existed. That was not a negotiable fact. It was written in her marrow. She could feel Caspian Greymane in the next room the way you could feel weather changing. A pressure shift, a temperature drop, a constant low hum of awareness that sat under everything else she was thinking. The second rule: the bond didn't override choice. A moon goddess bond was a gift, not a command. It told you who your mate was. It didn't tell you what to do about it. The third rule, the one Celine had decided on her own. She was not going to touch him. Perry had given her his word. She'd stood at his altar. The bond might be sacred, but so was the promise she'd made. And until that promise was properly, formally, decently dissolved, she was not going to look at Caspian Greymane like he was anything other than a diplomatic guest who had made an embarrassing scene at her wedding. This would have been significantly easier if he weren't everywhere. The cairn was not a large holding. The stone halls connected through shared corridors, the kitchen was the heart of the building, and every path between the guest wing and the library and the dining hall and the courtyard seemed to pass through the same 3 rooms. Caspian Greymane was in all of them. On the first morning, she found him in the kitchen. He was washing a mug. Just one mug. He was washing it with the careful attention of a man who had been raised to clean up after himself, and when he set it on the rack, he lined it up precisely with the others, handle facing left, same angle as the rest. Celine lined her mugs the same way. She stood in the doorway for 4 seconds before he noticed her. When he looked up, his expression was, she would think about this later, when she was alone, when she could afford to think about it. Careful. Controlled. A man holding a door closed from the inside. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." She crossed to the opposite counter, poured her tea. Her back was to him, and she could feel him the way you could feel a fire. Not the heat itself, but the knowledge of where the warmth was. "You line your mugs," she said. She didn't know why she said it. Handles left. Same. A silence. The kind of silence that was not empty but full. So full it was almost unbearable, packed with everything they weren't saying. "I should," she started. "Yes," he said, "you should." She left. Her tea was too hot, and she carried it with both hands and didn't look back. "You line your mugs the same way," Diana observed. "It's a common way to line mugs." "Is it?" "Shut up, Diana." On the second day, they were both in the library. She arrived first. She was reorganizing a shelf. Frequency of use, not Great Uncle Alderman's useless acquisition date system. When she heard footsteps and knew it was him before she turned around. She knew his footsteps. She'd known them for 2 days. This was insane. He stood in the doorway. "I didn't know you were here." "I'm always here at this hour." "I'll go." "You don't have to go." He didn't go. He didn't come in either. He stood at the threshold like a man who understood that 3 feet of doorway was the only thing keeping them both honest. "What are you sorting by?" he asked. "Frequency of use. The books people actually read go at eye level." "That's brilliant." "I know." He almost smiled. She almost smiled. They both didn't smile, and the not smiling was somehow worse than the smiling would have been, because they both knew the other one had almost done it. "Alderman's history is on the wrong shelf," he said. "Third from the right, it's filed under Regional Records, but it's actually a memoir." He just didn't have the nerve to call it that. Celine stared at him. "You've read Alderman's history?" The chapter on the SALT negotiations is accidentally hilarious. That's the exciting chapter. Then I have concerns about the rest of the book. Something was happening in her chest, something warm and specific and terrible. This man, this stranger, this king who had destroyed her wedding 2 days ago, was standing in her library doorway talking about her great-uncle's shelving system with the kind of precise, dry intelligence that she recognized because it was the way her own mind worked. He understood how she organized. He understood why. "He reads the same way you do," Diana said. "He went straight for the SALT negotiations." "That doesn't mean anything." "It means he's curious about the same things you're curious about. It means his mind reaches for the same shelves yours does." "But sure, doesn't mean anything." "I should go," Celine said. Out loud, to Caspian. "Yes," he said, again. Same word as yesterday, same gentle acknowledgement that leaving was the right thing to do, and neither of them wanted to do it. She left. His scent was in the library for the rest of the day. Cold riverstone and north wind and something green and sharp that she could not stop breathing in. On the third day, Caspian sat in the courtyard and tried to read and couldn't. "She's in the kitchen," Crag reported. "I know. She's making bread. She makes bread when she's upset. This is the 3rd time in 3 days. Crag, I am asking you to stop tracking her movements." "I'm not tracking her movements. I'm aware of her movements. There's a difference. I don't choose to know where she is. I simply know, the way I know where the sun is." "You wouldn't ask me to stop knowing where the sun is." "I would if the sun were engaged to another wolf." "The sun is not engaged. She shouldn't be either. This is a very simple situation, and everyone is making it complicated." Alice sat down next to him. His sister had been managing the diplomatic situation with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd grown up watching their brother navigate politics and had quietly decided she could do it better. She'd smoothed things with the Blackwood delegation. She'd spoken to Hugh Beckett. She'd written 3 letters on behalf of the Greymane territory that Caspian hadn't been calm enough to draft. "You look terrible," Alice said. Thank you. You haven't slept. I've slept. You've lain in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about the woman who's currently stress baking in the kitchen. That's not sleeping. It's horizontal. I'll take it. Alice looked at him. She had the same slate-gray eyes as Caspian, but hers were warmer, more willing to show what she was thinking, less defended. She'd always been the one who said the thing while he was still deciding whether to think it. She feels it too, Alice said. Everyone can see it. You walk into a room and she walks out. She walks into a room and you go still. It's like watching two magnets trying not to touch. She made a promise to Perry. Perry called off the ceremony himself. Suspended, not dissolved. There's a difference, and she's the kind of person who respects the difference. And you're the kind of person who respects her for respecting it. Yes. So you're both going to be miserable. Apparently, Alice sighed. She crossed her ankle over her knee and looked out at the courtyard where Perry Hale was crossing with an armload of firewood. He glanced at them, nodded. Alice nodded back. The firewood's for the kitchen, Alice said, watching him go. He's been keeping the kitchen stocked. He knows she bakes when she's upset. He's a good man. He is, Alice paused. He brought me tea yesterday, without being asked. He just noticed I didn't have any. Caspian looked at his sister. She looked away. Day 4. Day 5. Day 6. Every day was the same. Every day was worse. They sat at opposite ends of the dining table, and both reached for the same dish and pulled back at the same moment, and neither looked at the other, and everyone at the table saw it. He walked into the corridor, and she was coming the other direction, and they both stepped to the same side, and then the other side, and then stood there, 2 feet apart, and the air between them was so charged that Margot, watching from the kitchen doorway, said later that her hair stood up. She was fixing a loose hinge on the library door. She was always fixing things, her hands always busy, as though the only way to survive this week was to make everything around her work properly, since the one thing she couldn't fix was the thing consuming her from the inside. And he came around the corner and stopped. The hinge, he said. It's been catching for months. You need a longer screw. The door frame's old. The current screw is too short for the worn wood. It'll work loose again within the week. She stared at him. He'd looked at the hinge for 2 seconds and diagnosed the exact problem she'd been troubleshooting for 10 minutes. How did you... Our east wing has the same doors, same vintage, same problem. He paused. I can get you the right screw. I don't need your screws. That may be the most hostile sentence I've ever heard about hardware. She bit the inside of her cheek. She bit it because if she didn't bite it, she was going to laugh. And if she laughed, she was going to look at him. And if she looked at him, she was going to see his eyes doing the amber thing that meant his wolf was close to the surface. And if she saw that, she was going to... She bit harder. Thank you for the offer, she said, carefully. I'll manage. He nodded, started to walk away. His shoulder caught the narrow corridor wall and he stepped sideways, toward her, to correct. And for 1/2 second they were 6 inches apart in a stone hallway, and she could feel the heat coming off him, could smell the north wind and leather scent so close it was inside her lungs, could see the precise moment his eyes shifted from gray to amber and back again, fast, like a door opening and closing. Neither of them breathed. His hand came up, instinct, not decision, and stopped an inch from her arm. Hung there. She could feel the warmth of his palm without contact. The space between his hand and her skin was the most charged inch of air in the entire mountain. He pulled his hand back, set it flat against the wall, held himself there like a man using stone to stay upright. Good night, Celine, he said. His voice had dropped 1/2 octave. The wolf was in it. She could hear Crag the way you could hear thunder, not the sound itself but the vibration underneath. Good night, Caspian. She walked away. Her hands were shaking. Her skin, where he hadn't touched it, was burning. He almost touched you, Diana said. He didn't. His hand was an inch from your arm, I measured. You can't measure inches, Diana. You're a wolf. I can measure the distance between wanting and not having. That distance was 1 inch. I want it noted that 1 inch is very small. Celine pressed her forehead against the door. The wood was cool. The hinge was still loose. She could fix the hinge. She could not fix the rest. Chapter 3. The Release. Perry Hale sat at the kitchen table on the morning of the 7th day and said, "This is ridiculous." Celine looked up from her bread dough. Caspian, who'd been passing through the corridor and had stopped in the doorway because he couldn't help it, went still. Alice was at the counter pouring tea. She paused. "Sit down," Perry said to Caspian. "Both of you, please." They sat, across from each other, the table between them like a border neither would cross. Perry looked at them. He was wearing his working clothes, plain shirt, sleeves rolled, the kind of man who didn't dress for conversations because conversations were not performances. His eyes were warm and brown and direct. "I've watched you two destroy yourselves for a week," Perry said. "You're not eating, you're not sleeping. You walk into rooms like the air hurts. She," he nodded at Celine, "has made enough bread to feed the cairn for a month. And you," he looked at Caspian, "have read the same page of Alderman's history 9 times. I've been counting." "Perry," Celine started. "Let me finish." He put both hands flat on the table. "Celine, we had a good match. It was political, and it was practical, and I liked you and you liked me, and we were going to build something decent. I believe that. I still believe it. Then, but decent isn't this," he gestured between them. "This is a moon goddess bond, the rarest thing any wolf will ever see. I've been alive 31 years, and I never expected to witness one. And I'm not going to be the man who stands between it and the 2 people it chose." The kitchen was very quiet. "Our match was never fated," Perry said. "It was chosen. And it was a fine choice. But the moon goddess made a different one. And I've spent a week watching you both honor a promise I never asked you to die for." He looked at Celine. "I'm releasing you. Formally. No debt, no guilt. This is my choice, and I'm making it freely." Celine's eyes filled. She blinked hard. Once. Twice. Her hands were in the bread dough, and she didn't pull them out, because pulling them out would mean she didn't know what to do with them. "Perry," she said, "I gave you my word. Your word was given before the goddess gave hers. If the goddess outranks a political engagement, which I think she does, then your word was fulfilled the moment that bond landed." He looked at her. "You've been torturing yourself to honor something I've already let go of. Stop." Caspian had not spoken. He was sitting across the table with his hands flat on the wood, mirroring Perry without knowing it. And his face was doing the thing where managed mode and real mode existed in the same expression, and neither one was winning. "Perry," Caspian said. His voice was low, rough. "You're a better man than this situation deserved." "I know," Perry said, and something in the way he said it, dry, self-aware, without a shred of self-pity, made Alice laugh. It was a short laugh, surprised out of her. She covered her mouth. Perry looked at her. His eyes stayed a beat too long. She looked down at her tea. Nobody noticed except Caspian, who noticed everything about his sister and filed it away for later. "So," Perry said, turning back to the table. "That's done. What happens next is yours." He stood up. "I'm going to go help Hugh with the border survey. Someone should be doing the actual work around here while you two have been too busy not looking at each other to function." He walked out. At the doorway, he passed Alice. He stopped. "More tea?" he asked. "I'm fine," Alice said. "Your cup's empty." She looked at her cup. It was empty. "How did you—" "I notice things," he shrugged. "It's not a skill. It's just paying attention." He walked out. Alice stared after him for a moment, then shook her head slightly and left through the other door. Celine and Caspian were alone. The bread dough was warm under her hands. His scent was filling the kitchen. Cold stone and north wind and leather and something green that she'd been trying not to breathe for 7 days and was now breathing in so deeply her lungs ached with it. "Celine," he said. "Don't. I'm not going to touch you. I know you're not. I'm going to ask your father's permission to court you. Formally. Properly. The way you deserve. I don't need formal. You do. Because everything that's happened to you since I walked into that hall has been out of your control. The bond, the howl, the ceremony stopping, Perry making the call. None of that was yours. The courtship should be yours. Every step. Every pace. You set the speed. You set the distance. And if you want me to leave, I leave." She looked at him. Really looked at him, for the first time in 7 days. Not the sideways glances, not the peripheral awareness, not the careful avoidance of direct eye contact because direct eye contact made the bond hum at a frequency that short-circuited her higher brain function. She looked at him and he looked at her, and the kitchen was very warm and very still. His eyes were doing it. The amber ring at the edges, brightening. The wolf underneath, not hiding. She could see Crag in there, certain, patient, waiting the way stone waits. "Ask my father," she said. "Good," Diana said. Just the one word, just like that. Hugh Beckett listened to Caspian's request in his study, behind closed doors, for 14 minutes. Then he opened the door and said, "Don't make me regret this, son." Caspian walked into the courtyard. Celine was sitting on the stone wall, waiting. She'd known where he was because she could feel him the way she felt weather. He was warm south wind and approaching certainty. He stopped 3 feet from her. He said yes, Caspian said. "I know. I could hear your heartbeat change through the wall. That's wolf hearing. It's a curse." "What was it doing?" She looked at him. The afternoon light was on his face and his jaw was set the way it always was. Composed, political, the king's face. But underneath, visible only if you knew what to look for, something was shaking. "It was doing the thing where it goes heavy," she said. "Like each beat is being supervised by something older than you." He stared at her. "You can hear that?" "I've been hearing it for 7 days. In corridors, through walls. At dinner, across the table. Your heart isn't subtle, Caspian." It was the first time she'd used his first name. The sound of it in her voice did something to his face that his 6 years of kingship had not prepared him for. The managed mode cracked. Not all the way, not yet, but enough that she could see the real thing underneath. Not the king. Not the diplomat. Just a man standing in a courtyard hearing his name in the voice of the woman the moon goddess had chosen for him. "I'm going to court you," he said, "properly. I know. I'm going to bring you things. Not expensive things, specific things. Things I've noticed you need. You've been here 7 days. I've noticed a lot in 7 days." They stood 3 feet apart. Neither of them closed the distance. Not yet. Not today. But Celine uncrossed her arms, and Caspian's jaw loosened, just barely. And in the space between them, something settled. Not resolved, not complete, but settling the way a foundation settles when the weight it was built for finally arrives. "We're courting," Craig said. "Finally. I have been ready for this since the hall. I have been ready for 6 minutes and also 7 days. What are we bringing her? We should bring her something. We should bring her everything. We should, Crag." "What?" "One step at a time." "One step? We've wasted 7 days on steps. I have concerns about the pace of these steps." "Crag." She uncrossed her arms. Crag went quiet, considered this. She uncrossed her arms, Crag confirmed. "That's good. That's a step. I accept this step. What's the next step? When is the next step?" Is the next step soon? Chapter 4. The Courtship. He brought her a longer screw for the hinge. Not wrapped, not presented. He left it on the library windowsill with a note that said, in handwriting that was precise and slightly rigid, for the door frame, 38 millimeters. You were right that the wood was worn, but the old screw was also the wrong gauge. This one will hold. She found it in the morning. She stood at the windowsill and turned the screw between her fingers, and something in her throat did the thing where it got tight without warning. He measured the door frame, Diana said. He measured the door frame. While you weren't looking. While you were deliberately not looking at him, he was measuring your door frame. Huh. It's a screw, Diana. It's hardware. It's the exact right screw for a problem you've been trying to solve for 6 months. And he diagnosed it in 2 seconds from across a corridor on day 4 of not being allowed to talk to you. But sure, it's hardware. She installed the screw. The hinge closed perfectly. Smooth, silent, no catch. She hated how satisfied that made her. The courtship proceeded in practical gestures. He brought her a book on Alpine shelving systems he'd found in the Greymane library. Inside the cover he'd written, "Your frequency of use system is better, but page 47 has a solution for oversized volumes that might interest you." Page 47 had a solution for oversized volumes that interested her enormously. He repaired the kitchen window latch that had been sticking for years, not because she asked, but because he'd seen her fighting it every morning when she opened the window to check the weather, and he'd memorized which hand she used and what angle the latch required, and he'd simply fixed it while she was elsewhere. She noticed the next morning. The window opened smoothly. She stood there with her hand on the latch and the cold mountain air on her face, and she thought, he watches how I open windows. He watches how you do everything, Diana said. He just doesn't say so. On the 4th day of the courtship, he asked if he could walk with her. They walked the ridge trail above the cairn. The pines were thick and the air was cold and clean, and the valley spread below them in the late afternoon light. They walked side by side, not touching. Close enough that their sleeves brushed once, and they both pretended it hadn't happened. "Why do you fix things?" he asked. "Because they're broken." "That's not what I asked." She looked at him. He was watching the trail ahead. His profile against the mountain was steady, patient, a man who asked questions and then waited for the real answer without pushing. "Because I can," she said. "Because there's always something that needs doing, and most people wait for someone else to do it, and I don't like waiting. Because when I fix something, it stays fixed, and because..." She stopped. "Because?" "Because if I'm fixing something, I'm not standing still. And standing still is when I feel everything I'm not ready to feel." The trail was quiet. Wind in the pines. Their footsteps on packed earth. "I wash my own dishes," he said, "for the same reason." She looked at him. He looked at her. "We're very similar," she said. It was not a complaint. "We are. That should probably concern me." "It concerns me. I'm just choosing not to let it stop anything." "Touch his hand," Diana said. Celine didn't touch his hand, but she moved half a step closer on the trail, so that when their sleeves brushed again, she didn't pretend it hadn't happened. Meanwhile, at the edges of everything, Perry Hale and Alice Greymane kept finding themselves in the same room. It was not deliberate. Perry was handling the border survey that Hugh Beckett had asked him to manage, the practical work of realigning the Cairn Blackwood arrangement now that the wedding was off. Alice was handling the diplomatic correspondence for the Greymane territory, the practical work of explaining to 7 neighboring packs why her brother had howled at someone else's ceremony and was now, apparently, staying indefinitely. Their work overlapped. They used the same desk in the small council room because it was the only desk with enough surface area for maps and correspondence simultaneously. They worked in parallel, in near silence, with the easy competence of 2 people who were very good at logistics and slightly annoyed that everyone else was too distracted by romance to do any. "He brought her a screw," Alice said, not looking up from her letter. "I heard," Perry said, not looking up from his map. "For the library hinge. A 38 millimeter screw." He measured the door frame. "That's aggressively specific." "That's Caspian. He shows love like an engineer. Perry made a sound that might have been a laugh. Alice glanced at him. He was marking a boundary line with the kind of precise, small handwriting she associated with people who cared about getting things right. "You have nice handwriting," she said. "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. Every other Blackwood I've corresponded with writes like they're being attacked by the pen." He did laugh then. A real one. His face changed when he laughed. The steady, careful composure opened up and something warmer came through. Something that looked like it didn't get enough use. "My mother was a schoolteacher," Perry said. "Before she mated. She had strong opinions about penmanship." "My mother had strong opinions about chandeliers. The Greymane Great Hall has 3 too many, and I blame her entirely." 3 too many chandeliers sounds like a very specific complaint. It is. Caspian and I have been fighting about it for 6 years. Perry looked at her. She looked at him. The council room was small and warm, and their elbows were 6 inches apart on the shared desk. "More tea?" Perry asked. "You already asked me that today." "You said no. Your cup is empty again." Alice looked at her cup. Empty. She looked at Perry. Steady, warm, noticing. "Fine," she said. "Thank you." He got up to make tea. She watched him go and then looked back at her letter and realized she'd been writing the same sentence for 10 minutes and had no idea what it said. On the 7th day of the courtship, Celine stopped walking. They were on the ridge trail again, the spot where the pines thinned and the view opened up and the world went wide. She stopped and he stopped beside her, and neither of them said anything for a long time. "I need to tell you something," she said. "All right." "I'm scared." He waited. He was very good at waiting. It was one of the things she'd learned about him. He could stand in a silence without filling it, without shifting, without the need to make it easier. He just waited until the other person was ready, and the waiting was never impatient. "I'm scared because I don't know if what I feel for you is me or the bond," she said. "The moon goddess made this, she decided, and I'm the kind of person who makes her own decisions. I sort my own shelves. I pick my own flowers. I fix my own hinges. And this, the biggest thing that's ever happened to me, I didn't choose it. It was chosen for me." She looked at him. His face was very still. "What if I only want you because the bond wants you?" she asked. "What if all of this, the mugs, the shelves, the way you measured my doorframe, what if I only noticed those things because the goddess made me notice them?" The question sat between them. The wind was cold. Caspian turned to face her fully. His eyes were gray in the mountain light, clear and focused, and for once the amber was gone. Just his own eyes, no wolf, no bond, just the man. "When you sort books by frequency of use," he said, "is that the bond?" "What?" "When you pick your own flowers because the florist got it wrong, when you fix the hinge rather than wait for someone else, when you count the steps in an aisle, is that the bond?" "No, that's me. And when I wash my own dishes, when I measure a door frame from across a corridor, when I read your great-uncle's accidentally hilarious memoir and stay up to finish it because I'm genuinely interested, is that the bond?" The bond told me you were my mate. It didn't tell me you sort by frequency of use. It didn't tell me you bite the inside of your cheek when you're trying not to laugh. It didn't tell me your bread is better when you're upset because you knead harder. Those are things I learned, on my own, because I was paying attention, because I wanted to. He took a step back, away from her. The space between them widened and the cold rushed in. "I'm going to give you time," he said. "As much as you need. I'll stay at the cairn, or I'll go back to the Greymane and come when you ask. But I won't court you while you're not sure whether it's you or the bond doing the choosing. You deserve to know the difference before any of this goes further." He walked away. Down the trail, steady, measured steps. "He's leaving," Diana said. "He's giving me space. He's leaving. The trail, the ridge, the place that smells like both of you. He's walking away because you asked a question and his answer was to give you the room to find yours." "I know what he's doing, Diana. Do you know what you're doing?" Celine stood on the ridge and watched him go. The wind was cold on her face, and there was a pain in her chest that was not metaphorical. A tight physical ache, like someone was slowly pulling a thread attached to her sternum, and the other end of the thread was walking down a mountain trail with steady, measured steps. She pressed her hand against her ribs. The pressure didn't help. It never helped. She'd been pressing her hand against the same spot for 9 days, and the ache had only gotten worse. And she was beginning to understand that the ache was not the bond. The bond was the hum underneath, constant, low, indifferent to her feelings about it. The ache was hers. The ache was wanting. Below, the cairn sat in the valley like a hand holding something precious. She could feel him, every step he took away from her, registering in the space behind her ribs like the thread being drawn tighter. She stood there for a long time. That evening, she passed the council room. The door was open. Perry and Alice were inside, working at the shared desk. Alice was drafting something and frowning at it. Perry leaned over, read 3 lines, and pointed to a word. Amicable, he said. Not amenable. You want them to feel warmth, not compliance. Alice looked at him, then at the word, then back at him. You're right. That's exactly right. My mother, the school teacher. Your mother, the school teacher, should be running foreign correspondence for the Greymane territory. Perry smiled. It was a quiet smile, the kind that happened before the person decided whether to show it. And Alice saw it, and something in her face softened in a way Celine had never seen on a Greymane. Celine kept walking. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. Chapter 5. The Choosing. Celine spent 2 days fixing everything in the cairn. She repaired the south wall mortar. She restrung the dining hall curtains. She reorganized the root cellar by vegetable type, then by season, then by frequency of use. She oiled every hinge in the building. She replaced the washer in the courtyard pump. Margot found her in the cellar on the second evening, surrounded by turnips. You're sorting root vegetables, Margot said. They were in the wrong order. There is no wrong order for turnips, Celine. Celine sat down on an upturned crate. Her hands were dirty and her hair was falling out of its pins. And she looked, for the first time since the wedding, not angry. Just tired. Tired and clear. He told me to take time, she said. I heard. He walked away, not because he wanted to, because I needed him to. And I've spent 2 days fixing every broken thing in this building, because that's what I do when I can't fix what's actually broken. And the thing that's actually broken is that I let him walk away. And I already know I shouldn't have. Margot sat down next to her. Why? Because the bond didn't teach me how he takes his tea. The bond didn't make me notice that he lines his mugs the same way I do. The bond didn't tell me he reads my great-uncle's book and finds the same chapter accidentally hilarious. Those are things I know because I paid attention. The same way he paid attention when he measured my doorframe. The same way he noticed I opened the window left-handed, and the latch needed replacing. She looked at Margot. I know the difference. I've known the difference for days. The bond made me feel the pull. But the man, the actual man, the man who brings me screws and books and washes 24 bowls at my sink and walks away from me on a ridge because he thinks that's what I need. I want him. Not because of the goddess, because of the mugs. Are you done? Diana asked. Yes. Good. Go. She found him in the courtyard at dawn. He'd been sleeping in the east wing. He hadn't left the cairn. He'd just created distance within it, giving her the space she'd asked for, existing in the same building, but out of her orbit. He was sitting on the stone wall where she usually sat, watching the mountains go silver in the early light. And when she appeared in the courtyard, he stood up, the way you stand up when the thing you've been waiting for arrives, and you're not sure if it's yours yet. Celine, he said. She walked toward him, not running, walking. 14 steps, she counted, the way she counted everything, across the flagstones. "I know the difference," she said. He waited. "The bond told me you were mine. It was right. But it didn't tell me why. It didn't tell me you wash your own mug. It didn't tell me you read the worst chapter of Alderman's history and stayed up to finish the book. It didn't tell me you measure door frames, or count my facial muscles, or bring me the exact right screw for a problem I've been fighting for 6 months." She was close enough now that she could see his heartbeat in his throat. Fast. Heavy. The old kind of heavy. "The goddess chose you for me, but I am choosing you for myself. Those are two different things, and I need you to know I know the difference." Caspian's face did something she had never seen it do. The managed mode didn't crack. It dissolved. Completely. All at once. Like a wall that had been load-bearing for 6 years, suddenly discovering it didn't need to hold anything up anymore, because the person standing in front of it was the foundation. His eyes were wet. Not spilling, just bright. Wolf bright. Amber burning through the gray. He didn't wipe them. He didn't look away. "You're choosing me," he said. "I'm choosing you. Because of the mugs. Because of the mugs." A sound came out of him that was almost a laugh, and almost something else entirely, something that had been held for 7 days and 2 days more, and was now being released the way you release a breath you didn't know you'd been holding. Except she could forgive the cliché because his face, the way his face looked when he stopped being the king and became the man. She reached for him. Her hand found his jaw. His skin was warm. She could feel the stubble and the tension and the heartbeat that she'd been listening to through walls for 7 days. And it was right there, under her palm. Real and fast and his. His hand came up and covered hers, pressed it against his face, held it there. They stood like that, breathing. Her hand on his jaw, his hand over hers. The mountains going gold behind them. "I'm going to kiss you," she said, "because I'm choosing to." She kissed him. It was not a first kiss between strangers. It was a first kiss between two people who had spent 9 days memorizing each other from across rooms, and through walls, and along trails, and over kitchen tables, and through the specific charged silence of two hearts beating in the same rhythm while their owners pretended not to hear it. His hands were in her hair. Her hands were on his shoulders. The world narrowed to the place where their mouths met. And the bond, the moon goddess's rarest gift, went quiet for the first time since the hall. Not gone. Just settled. Like a frequency that had been searching and had finally found its match. When she pulled back, barely, just enough to breathe, his forehead dropped to hers. His eyes were closed. His voice was barely above a whisper. "The mugs," he said. "The mugs," she confirmed. "Finally," Crag said, at a volume that suggested he had been holding this in for 9 days and was no longer physically capable of restraint. "Finally. I told you. I told you in the hall. I was right in the hall. Everyone doubted me and I was Crag," Caspian thought. "What?" "You can stop now." "I cannot stop. I have been waiting 9 days. Do you know how long 9 days is in wolf time? It is 900 years. I have been patient for 900 years, and Crag, she's still here. She's not going anywhere." Crag stopped. "She's still here," Crag confirmed, quieter, almost gentle. "She's still here." And Diana, who had waited, through 7 days of silence and 2 days of turnips and a lifetime of sardonic remove, said one word. Home. The marking happened on the ridge, 3 weeks later. Not because they were waiting for ceremony, because Celine wanted to be sure, and sureness for her was not a feeling but a conclusion drawn from evidence. The evidence? He went home to the Greymane territory and came back the following weekend. And the weekend after. And the one after that. Each time he brought something specific, a bag of garlic from his mother's garden, a set of proper mending tools with handles worn smooth from use, the ruined boot he'd lost in the chimney on day 3 of trying to be useful. He set the boot on her desk. "A trophy," he said. "A trophy of what?" "The day I tried to fix your chimney and lost a boot, and you almost smiled." "I didn't almost smile." 7 muscles, Celine. "How do you know about the 7 muscles?" Crag counts. The marking was on the ridge where the pines thinned and the world opened up, the same spot where he'd walked away, the same spot where she'd stood and felt the thread pull tight. She chose the place deliberately. She was always deliberate about the things that mattered. She bit first, her teeth on his shoulder, through his shirt, and the sound he made was not a king's sound. It was the sound of a man who had spent his entire adult life being composed and had just been given permission to stop. He marked her in return, at the place where her neck met her shoulder, where her pulse ran close to the surface. She gasped. Her hand found his. Their wolves went quiet. Not silent, just still. 2 tuning forks finding the same frequency at the same moment. They sat on the ridge for a long time, his arm around her, her head against his shoulder, the cairn below them in the valley. "I have something to tell you," Celine said. "What?" "Perry and Alice are together." Caspian went very still. "What?" "They didn't say anything, but last weekend when I went to get Alice for dinner, she was in the council room with Perry, and they were sharing a desk and he was making her tea, and she was laughing at something he'd written, and their elbows were touching and neither of them was pretending it wasn't happening." "How long?" "I think since the kitchen. The morning he released me. Maybe before." Caspian stared at the valley. "My sister is dating the man you were supposed to marry. Your wolf howled at my wedding, and now my almost groom is courting your sister." "Yes. That's symmetrical. I was going to say insane." "That too." "A beat." "He makes her tea," Celine said. "He notices things," Caspian said. "He does." And she laughs. Alice doesn't laugh easily. Neither does Perry. They looked at each other. The sun was setting behind the mountains and the light was doing the thing where it turned everything gold. The pines, the stone, the 2 wolves sitting on a ridge above a valley where everything had started with a howl and was ending with the quiet certainty of 2 people who had chosen each other despite every reason not to. 2 for 2, Crag said smugly. "The Greymanes don't miss." "That's not how this works," Caspian said. "It is exactly how this works. I identified our mate, Alice identified hers. We are an efficient family." Alice didn't howl at anyone's wedding. She had the advantage of not being at a wedding. If she had been at a wedding, she absolutely would have howled. "It's genetic." Celine laughed, not the bitten cheek suppression, the real thing, open and warm and startled. And the sound of it rolled down the ridge and into the valley, and Caspian thought, This is what the moon goddess heard. This is the sound she was trying to make when she made the bond. Craig had one more thing to say, just one. "Home," he said. And Diana, from the quiet place inside Celine, where the wolf who'd waited her whole life to say one true thing had finally said it. "Home."